Welcome to the F5 Networks Advanced Web Application Firewall demo series. In this demo, we'll show how to use a BIG-IP Advanced WAF security policy to prevent malicious users from bypassing the login page of a web application. This is demo 32 of the AWAF Demo series, and it's intended for advanced level BIG-IP Advanced WAF users. For optimal viewing, we recommend using full screen mode. The environment for this demo contains 3 devices. A Windows workstation will be used to submit forceful browsing requests that attempt to bypass a web application's required login page. These requests will arrive at the F5 BIG-IP system, running Advanced WAF. The BIG-IP system sits in front of, and protects, the back-end web application. The BIG-IP system, using its full proxy architecture, examines every request, and can block all forceful browsing attacks, and prevent them from going to the back-end web servers. Let's start by attempting to send requests to a protected web application, without first logging in. We're presented with the DVWA login page. All users should submit their login credentials, before accessing the web application. Instead of logging in, we'll submit a request using the URL field, which includes parameter names and values. Let's submit another request. Notice we didn't see a response page in the browser, but we also were not blocked. To prevent this, we'll add login page enforcement for this web application. First, we'll examine the virtual server we're using to bypass the login page. This is a standard HTTP virtual server that listens on 10.1.10.35. On the virtual server security policies page, you can see that we already have a security policy attached to this virtual server named 28 login security policy. We'll now examine the 2 requests we submit using the BIG-IP Advanced WAF event log. By viewing the log entry, we can see that, although we didn't see a response page in the web browser, the request was successfully sent to the web application, and bypassed the login page. If these requests had contained malicious data in the input fields, it could have caused anything from data loss to taking the web application offline. We'll fix this vulnerability by adding login page enforcement to the security policy. The first thing we need to do is identify a few things about the web application login page. We need to identify the exact URL, which in this case is login.php. Then, we need to identify the parameter names for both input fields on the page. We can select to inspect the field, and we can then identify the name value for the first input field, which is username. The name of the second input field is password. Now, let's examine the allowed URLs page. These URLs were added from trusted requests when we built this security policy. You can see that login.php is on the allowed URLs list. We'll now open the URL parameters page. You can see that we also already have both the username and password parameters attached to the login.php URL. We need both the login page URL and the username and password parameter names when creating a login page element, which is required for login page enforcement with a BIG-IP Advanced WAF security policy. We'll now access the login pages list page and create a new login page element. We'll select the login.php URL from the list. We'll then select the authentication type, which for this web application is a HTML form. We'll enter names of both the username field and the password field. And finally, we'll enter the expected HTTP response status code of 302. We'll now access the login enforcement page. We use this page to create authenticated URLs. An authenticated URL will only be available to users after they've successfully logged in, using the login page element we just created. We'll enter both the URLs we used earlier as authenticated URLs. After adding both URLs, we'll save and then apply the policy. Let's test this out using the DVWA login page. This attempt to bypass the login page is now blocked by the BIG-IP Advanced WAF security policy. This attempt is also blocked by BIG-IP Advanced WAF. Let's try a third attempt. This request is still allowed. Do you know why? Remember, we need to add each URL that we want to protect as an authenticated URL, and we didn't add the vulnerabilities/root URL to the list. Before we fix this, let's log in as a valid user. And submit a request for the XSS reflected page. Notice that the user was able to access this URL because they first successfully logged into the application. On the login enforcement page, we can also use a wildcard within the authenticated URL. For example, this entry will make all URLs within the vulnerabilities directory as authenticated URLs. Let's try bypassing the login page for the root URL again. It's now blocked. Let's try using a different URL, the vulnerabilities/SQLi blind URL. Now, all URLs within the vulnerabilities directory are protected with login page enforcement. Let's examine the blocked requests in the event log. We'll first filter the log file to show only blocked log entries. The violation is login URL bypassed. We can also see the violation rating and the attack type, which is forceful browsing. Thank you for watching this demonstration on using F5 BIG-IP Advanced WAF to prevent malicious users from bypassing the login page of a web application. We encourage you to watch additional AWAF demos, and for more details on how Advanced WAF can protect your web applications, contact your F5 Networks Sales Account Manager. For questions or comments about this video, contact Chris Manley at the email address at the bottom of the page.